Tech Social. My name is Gabi. I'm a business analyst here at Cogent. We have also Edgar here with us, an associate director, and he is always our moderator. Today, we will be talking about the empathy engine, building products that resonate with consumers with Shelby Thomas. She will have a chance to introduce herself in a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, anything that you want to comment, you can use the chat. We will take those questions over there, or also you can raise your hand. And as Edgar was saying, make this more interactive and dynamic. Thanks again for being here. Edgar, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Gabi. So I think today's topic is going to be great because in general, building these products that resonate with our customers, I think the great part about it is that it can be summed up in making our customers happy, right? So I think that has great value because when a customer is happy about our product, we can say that it aligns perfectly with their needs, desires, and their lifestyle. And that by itself brings a lot of value to the table because then we can create a brand that is strong, that people recognize, and also make the product more easier to market, right? To make some marketing and that people feel well about it. So that being said, I'm really looking forward to hear more about what it is like to play this role in all the intricacies and all the things that are there, all the secrets in the profession. And over to Shelby. Shelby, please tell us more about yourself and what you do, and we will start from there.
All right, sounds great. Well, thank you again so much for having me today. It's very exciting to be here and have this conversation. I think, there's a lot that starts with the customers and the product development life cycle. So I'm excited to get more into it. But a little bit about myself. My professional background in the software industry has been specifically in insurance technology. So working with software solutions for either carriers, agencies, MGA brokers, currently for the retail insurance space. So, when you go to look for an auto policy for your car, going to somebody who's going to shop around for you for those policies. So that's kind of a little bit of a broad example for what I do, but kind of the best way to make somebody who's not familiar with the industry understand. So I have over 5 years experience in this industry, but really what I found is a lot of what I do in my day-to-day really applies across many different software solutions. So right now I work for a company called Dyad. I have some of my coworkers I see on today, so very excited that they decided to join. We do build software solutions for retail agents, agency networks, wholesalers, MGAs, carriers, etc. So we have a lot of different solutions under our belt. I primarily work on one that is a CRM policy management hybrid. And that's kind of where I mean that a lot of the applications that I have currently, can expand to multiple places. So we have a CRM that's built into the policy management. So you take the CRM, most companies these days need some sort of CRM to manage their clients, keep those contacts. We're not using physical address books anymore. So being able to go and look that stuff up. So the application there is broad, but that's a little bit about my experience.
All right, that sounds very interesting. Actually, I believe the other day, or I remember rather, that we were talking about how we can communicate what we do to our families and like friends and that sort of stuff. And we were saying something like, yeah, so sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that, but we tend to say, yeah, I work with computers, right? Or with software, but but yeah, definitely.
It changes every day depending on who you're talking to. And I always make a joke, my dad's a lawyer, and so this world doesn't translate to what he does at all. And he, for a long time, just said I worked in insurance. And I was like, well, kind of. I work for software that caters to insurance. So I technically work for software, but exactly, it just depends on who you're talking to. And I think the same translates to my day-to-day with our customers, just kind of being able to get it to a level that they can understand based on their own experience.
Exactly. And in this case, it's clear to me that you are, really working with computers or with the software pretty
Yeah.
often, but I understand that you also have this very close contact with people while you are working with the users. So can you tell us a bit more about that? How is that interaction happening in your day-to-day? Is it like, are you receiving tickets, or is it more like you are talking to them directly, or is a combination of that? What can you tell us about that interaction that you have with your customers?
Sure, yeah. So I actually really enjoy this role, and I think it's kind of unique in the product space from what I've seen in my experience. So my role title is product specialist, and I wear a lot of different hats in that, but most of them deal directly with the customers. So my personal support, or sorry, my personal background is in support. So I was typically doing, the
Mm.
tickets would come in, customers would either be like, I don't know how to figure out what I'm doing, or this isn't working the way that I'm used to. And we would either get on a call or a video chat and kind of walk through, and I would either take their bugs and report it to the development team, or I'd advise them on ways that maybe they could do it a lot quicker and easier, maybe something more efficient than the way that they're doing it. When I joined Dyad, I was hired as a product specialist. So the idea was I would be doing some support, but I would also be training, coaching, implementing. And I think that's the part of my job that I am really excited to do, because as much as I love support, I think, I really enjoy troubleshooting and getting down to those answers for a client who's having a hard time. I enjoy the other half of my job where, I get to listen. I get to have that extra level of empathy and just get on a call and say, what are the problems that you're having? Can I either show you a better way to do it, or can I go to the product team and say, hey, there's this large gap that we're missing in the day to day of these clients. Can we maybe do something there? So I get a lot of different facets in this specific role, but most of it does boil down to just constant interaction with their clients, figuring out either where we're missing the bar or could do better, and then telling them ways that they can do their day to day better, something they might be missing, like a feature that it either exists or I know is coming that I can train them on, anything to make our customers' lives a little bit easier.
Mhm. All right. So what happens, for example, if one of the customers is suggesting a feature or complaining about a bug, and you take that feedback maybe to the back to the product team, and then that contradicts one of the features that they were trying to implement, or was in the roadmap. So how do you guys handle that decision of maybe that's not the right thing to do, or maybe we should listen to the customer? So how do you balance that kind of scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this one is a unique role too, because I didn't experience too much of that disruptive roadmap feature thing at my last role, because we catered to one client. We really just catered
Hmm.
to insurance carriers. So here we're catering to a lot of different clients. There's a lot of uses for our software in the insurance space. So I think that's a great question, and one that, we often are in all industries and all softwares kind of dealing with figuring out the best way to do that. But what I've seen and what I think we do really well is when there is a feature request, something that maybe we're not doing correctly, the first is to ask the why. What is it that you're trying to do? What is the end goal that you're hoping to reach? What's the business case for it? So maybe if we start figuring out the why and the concern and the problem, maybe we already have something that addresses that. Maybe there's a feature that, already exists that can do that for you, or maybe we can advise on a different way to do it. So I think that's our number one first step across both, the support teams and the implementation teams, just figuring out the why of the problem and what the business case is. Is this something the state's requiring? Is this something your company's decided to require? Once we're past that point, if it's decided that a feature is needed and maybe some other feature is already out there on the roadmap to get completed soon, or, is in the near future on the roadmap, I think we just kind of take that with the information that we had and try to consolidate, see if, we can fit it into this existing feature, if it trumps the existing feature, and then go around and ask more questions to the folks that were asking for this original feature. Would this work for you too? Where can we find the balance across all of these use cases? And I think the number one thing is getting down and dirty and talking to the customers, like just having that sit down, watching their day to day and seeing, where can we find the solution that will reach across all of these different use cases. So a lot of that is
Mhm.
just, repetitive conversations, coming back with prototypes saying, would this work for you? Does this accomplish everything that you're looking for? But just making sure to keep the customer a part of that process, I think really takes a lot of the inevitable bugs or inevitable, this isn't working the way that we wanted. Just keeping the customer in the loop, I think, is the most important part of it.
Right, right. I mean, you mentioned something that really resonated in me, and that is uh, about this understanding the why, right, behind what is happening. And based on my experience, not every time that's not every time like the easiest way to or the easiest thing to do, right? Um, do you use any particular techniques, any particular questions that help you uncover that particular why behind something is happening or why they are trying to reach something? In my experience, sometimes that really needs some particular training. So I'm curious
Yeah.
about that.
I think I've been very lucky in this role and my last role, where when asked the why, most of our customers do pretty much understand what we're looking for. But typically, if I do have a customer that doesn't really get it, the main thing that I explain is the more that I understand the why, the better we can prioritize that, right? So if I know what the end goal is and what you're trying to accomplish and how important that is to your day to day, to you servicing your customers, is it billing related? Is it getting that information out the door related? Or is it something we can wait a little bit on, maybe just a little glitch that we have a workaround for? Really understanding that core reason and why will help me go back to the product team and say, hey, I think this is really important and I think we should move this up the roadmap because this is the consequence of us not having that feature ironed out. So once I kind of express to customers, us having this conversation and being completely aligned on what your why and your business reason is will help in that prioritization. I think that really clicks for them because they're like, oh, this, will directly impact when I can get this feature and when I will see it in the software. So they're a little more excited to engage and provide information if they understand the why as well. So I think that's pretty much the best way that I've gotten that understanding across of being like, this is exactly what I need. I need as much information as you can provide me.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. And did you ever have a problem where you were using like close-ended questions, like where people respond just yes, no, or things like that? And did you have this transition where you started asking open-ended questions? Because I can see that you do that normally, right? So you can get all of that information, but that shift is sometimes difficult to achieve. And I again I'm speaking from my experience, right? We tend to start asking questions that seem simple for us, but in the end wouldn't give us much information back. So did you went through that transition or not really?
It happens from time to time. I think
Hmm.
sometimes if it depends on the scenario too. So if we're going through something where a customer is trying to do something and they're getting errors, I need the exact steps that they took. It can't really be open-ended. I need the precise information of how they got
Mm.
there so we can kind of try and replicate it and see if it's a bug. In the feature world, if we're trying to write up, whatever the requirements are for the customer, kind of get an idea of what it is, I think open-ended questions work, but have to be a little more guided in my realm because we have to make sure that we take a lot more into account, such as like errors and emission exposures, state requirements, making sure they're doing everything that each individual state asks for insurance-wise, because every state has crazy different insurance policies in the US. So they have different rules, different things that you have to go through. So, making sure that we're satisfying every requirement and thinking about every other thing that could be impacted. But there are some times where I think open-ended questions work great, especially for like a prototype for something new that's coming, bringing that screenshot, that Figma, whatever you have to the customer and being like, just talk to me out loud. tell me what you're seeing, tell me what you're feeling. I don't want to ask any questions. I want to see what your experience is and how you would interact with this prototype. So we've been doing that pretty recently with a lot of features that we're considering rolling out. And I think I've watched one of my product managers do the coolest thing, and I think it's the most impactful. So when we're going through these prototypes, if they ask what the intent for something is, we just flip it back and say, what would you think this would do? We don't want to guide you anywhere. We want to make sure that you tell us where you think this button would click you over to, or where this feature would open up, or what screen this is going to lead to. So I think those are really impactful, but it is just very dependent on, what the issue at hand is. I think for those new fancy features where we really want to make our system cool and modern, those are great. And I think it really leads to a lot of user insight. So definitely kind of a learning curve of figuring out what problem am I facing today and how do I address that problem with the customer.
Wow. I just love that question about what do you think this would do, right? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's amazing. And I'm not even, participating in building this product, but I was already asking myself, like, what should this button do?
Yeah.
So
I
it's a
catch
fantastic
myself doing
question.
it now all the time when I go to new websites and stuff, and I'll just click something and it doesn't do. And I'm like, what did I think it was going to do? Like, I'm really addressing myself like the end user now.
That's amazing. All right, fantastic.
I
You
have
also
a
mentioned
quick
some.
question here. Sorry,
Sure,
Ed.
Gary, please go ahead.
Like
Yeah.
going back to like conversations with the client whenever they introduce a new feature that wasn't part of the roadmap. How do you handle communication when obviously the timeline is impacted due to adding more and more features that weren't there on the first place?
Yeah, I think it's very dependent on the customer and what you're rolling out, first of all. It's also dependent on how much the customer has been in the software world. Like I have some folks that I've worked with over the years that if you just say, you know, under agile methodologies, it's going to have to go in the next sprint. The next sprint is, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks out, whatever. Some of them get it and it's wonderful. And then you can stop there and not have any more of the conversation. But typically they don't, right? So I think kind of setting expectations from the beginning of saying, maybe we need this sprint to accomplish this base part of it. And then the next sprint will have the full feature rolled out just to compete with other high priority bugs or whatever, maybe in that sprint that's going beforehand. I think just setting expectations, most folks don't get too upset with it, as long as you're not, over promising and underperforming. I think, we all can get by it, right? Because every industry, no matter what you're in, is going to have something that is not going to happen immediately, even though you really need it to. Software is the worst about it, and it is tough to set those. But I think, like I said, if you're just honest in the beginning and let them know where it has to sit, if we need to move it up to, we'll always try. It always is going to depend on the importance of it. Again, if it's impacting major business processes like billing or, getting important forms out, we're going to try to move that up, hot fix it, do whatever we can to get it out the door quicker. But I think, like I said, for those larger features, most people understand if you just are honest from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, totally understand. And actually, I think I asked this question, and like 2 minutes later, Srilatha asked a very similar question. I think it was answered already, but let me say it. How should changes in project requirements or gaps in client communication be effectively managed?
Yeah, I think that's a good question if you take it just to the project requirements part, right? So let's say a customer has a great idea for the project or the product, and we take it to our product team and we say, hey, customer has this great idea, is there any way we can build it out? And there's always going to be some limitations. We can do a whole lot of coding, we can do wonderful things with coding, but we can't do everything. And there's sometimes that something is built a certain way, we can't build on top of it, or there's just not the functionality for that in whatever system we're writing in, right? So I think a lot of the time we're always going to have a few of those where we're going to have to go back to the customer and say, hey, I know we had this big dream and we were really excited for this big dream, but we have to kind of take a step back and look at it a different way just because of what we're running into, right? And I think that's another thing where I'm going to be kind of repeating the same thing, but I think honesty really gets a long way, just being upfront with your customers and letting them know these are the limitations we're up against. We're still going to create this feature, but maybe we have to change it a little bit. Does that still work with your business processes? Would you be able to accomplish the same thing? I've found great luck, just being honest and kind of explaining it more. I think as long as you don't do the sorry, we can't do it, you're pretty good, right? So if you
Right.
at least explain to them, they spend all this time giving you a use case and examples and all this kind of stuff. The very least that we could do is reciprocate that by explaining where we're at, what we're doing. And then on top of that, even aside from any changes in the requirements, just keeping them updated too. If we finally got it in a sprint or we're taking a look at the requirements and writing them up, just shooting a quick email to say, hey, just wanted to check in with you, let you know we're writing the requirements now. We should get the ball rolling here soon. Will go a ton of like a super long way for that customer and make a ton of impact to them as far as their faith in your product and their faith that they're just getting heard. So, right, going back to the empathy, they're going through a lot too. We all have a long day at the office, right? We're all up against a lot of challenges. Anything we can do to make it a little easier for them is really going to help set the stage for if we do have to say, hey, we can't do it exactly like we dreamed. So I think just being honest, being open, and continuing to update the customers will kind of help, ease that transition a little bit if we do have to have those conversations.
Okay, perfect. Actually, now that you went back to the empathy part, I'm curious because you also mentioned that while you are studying, for example, a new feature, right, with the customer, you present the feature, but you also ask about their feelings, like their experience that they are having. So I'm curious, has it ever happened to you guys that you have like the right feature because it has to do what it has to do, but somewhat the customer is not feeling, perfectly well about it? Like they have this strange feeling perhaps that something is not quite right. And if that has happened to you, what were, what was the outcome? What was the solution that you guys found, or what would be the solution in case you haven't experienced that?
Yeah. I think things similar to that happen from time to time, right? Like maybe we misunderstood what the original ask was, or we failed to take into account something else. And I think one, we can avoid it altogether by keeping the customer a part of the conversation, going to them with prototypes before you even build it, making sure they have input along the way. Specifically at Dyad, just to talk a little bit about the software that I work on, we're building a new version that is this brand new, sleek, modern design, really builds efficiency for all of our customers, reduces clicks, just makes their day-to-day a lot easier. But during the process of building this new version, we kept customers in the loop. We asked them for their feedback as they were learning and beta testing. We kept them involved. And that really got past a lot of those problems we could have encountered because they were part of the process, right? So I think keeping them part of the process avoids this problem entirely. But if for some reason it does happen, we roll out a feature, maybe, one customer wasn't getting back to our emails and they have a business case that didn't apply to everybody else that we didn't consider. I think we typically just go back and take another look. It's fine to rework a feature, to make some small changes to it, to see what we can do. If we maybe drop the ball in getting all the use cases, getting all the information from our customer, getting a lot of examples, we can always go back and tweak it and fix it. In those instances, I always make sure if I'm part of that process or part of that requirement, maybe I was the one fielding the information from the customers, going back to the other customers and saying, hey, one of our other customers brought this up. Does this work for you? Is this something you would encounter? Would this impede on your day to day? And then just going and refining those requirements, right? I think this, again, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but keeping them part of the loop in the beginning avoids a lot of this because they're testing it, they're playing around with it. But we will miss some of those things because even in a test environment, it's not their day to day, right? Like you don't anticipate the things that happen from your 9 to 5 when you're testing something out. You have like a good test case, a good example client, something like that, but you really can't anticipate everything fully. So I think just being flexible, listening fully to those and kind of taking it back and doing our due diligence to make sure we have the requirements filled out is the best way to achieve, kind of the balance there for everybody.
Okay. And what happens, for example, if we all know that bugs, for example, are like always gonna happen, or even if we test our software very well, there will always be some
Right.
bugs here and there. But what happens when the customers find a bug, and what happens if they are in a rush and perhaps the bug is impeding them to do what they have to do, and they get angry, for example? What would be the best or the most effective technique that you have encountered to help them first understand that this is something that is temporary and that can be fixed, and after that, also help them achieve what they need to achieve, because sometimes it's not so much about the bug, but the thing that they are unable to do due to that, right? So what are like the best solutions that you have found to tackle that kind of situation?
That's an awesome question. I think this took me a couple years to really file down to get the best way to avoid, any customer backlash, because I mean, we completely understand it, right? We all use different softwares in our day to day. If I am getting ready for my morning and I really want to listen to music and Spotify is not working that day, it's going to ruin my whole day. So I
I know.
totally understand. And I think that's the number one thing is just start off with, hey, got your request. I'm looking into it immediately, letting them know that we saw it in some way that's not, I know a lot of ticketing systems, I've worked with a ton at this point, send out that automated email that's like, hey, we got your request, we're working on it, but making sure to put that human bit in it and saying, hey, an actual human saw your ticket. We are taking a look at it. I promise we're going to try and get you a solution. The first thing that I like to do personally is see if we can find a workaround. Because sure, it's going to go into an agile sprint. Probably it's going to take a little bit for a developer to take a look, get the fix, fully test it, and then get that fix out, right? So we want to see if there's a way that we can accomplish the same goal. Maybe it's going to take a few more clicks, a couple more minutes, something like that. But first, see if there's anything that we can do in the meantime. We found customers really appreciate any way that they can get done what they need to get done, especially in some of these issues where in the insurance world, we're up against compliance, we're up against time constraints with billing and those sorts of things. So I start by clicking around and seeing if I can find a workaround. Luckily, there's workarounds built into a lot of system processes across a lot of different softwares. It can be changing a URL to get exactly where you want to be, or just going the long way around and not doing all your shortcuts that you're used to. So focusing on that. And then again, we always want to kind of take into account the impact of the bug, right? So, like, how big is this impact? What is it doing to your day to day? Again, are we up against a compliance issue here? Are we up against a time constraint? Does this involve money? And does it involve a lot amount of money? Those kinds of things are really going to help us understand how big is this bug? How quickly do we need to get it fixed? Does it need to be a hot fix candidate? Those sorts of things to kind of prioritize where we need to get it out. And then again, I've said this a few times, but I think it's super important to keep the customer in the loop as you're going. It's okay if it takes longer than they want. Typically, they're going to be really understanding if you keep them updated. If a couple of days go by, maybe it's sitting in a sprint and we can't get it to it right away, just emailing the customer and saying, hey, I want to make sure that you don't feel that I forgot you. I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm tracking it. I'm making sure to follow up with it the best that I can. And we're trying to get it pushed up as quickly as possible. Even if you're not able, just letting them know that you're trying will go a long way. And I think that application is great anywhere, outside of the software world, just on an empathetic level with other humans, hey, I'm working on it. I'm trying. I can't right now. Or somebody calls you, you're like, hey, I'm really busy. Can I call you back in a couple of days once everything cools down? Same thing with our customers, treat them like you would a family member, letting them know, hey, we're trying our best right now. I just need a couple more days. I need a few more hours until I can get you a concrete answer. And then, always trying to set your expectation with your product and development teams on top of that, letting them know, hey, this is the level of criticality. This is when it needs to go out. Sometimes that requires you chasing up people for a couple days. And I think it's important to, we all have a large workload. Maybe you just need to send a couple of reminders. Typically, we're going to get that bug taken care of as soon as we possibly can. And that way we can kind of affect their understanding of it, their complacency with it, and, get the best solution to them.
Mhm.
I actually wanted to ask, oh,
Ah,
sorry, Ed.
yes, Gabby. I
No,
just wanted
because
to say that.
yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I just want to say that I'm really enjoying the talk because as you speak, I get those feelings, like where you were saying that you keep the customer in the loop, and then you keep them informed, and that you are trying to do the best that you can. To me, that's like top service because I think we wish we could have that level of empathy and as you were saying, um, feeling, right? That the other person is really caring about us and what we need. And I think that's awesome. So thank you for
I,
sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's tough in a technical world too, because, most of us technical people are a little more analytic and a little
Hmm.
less empathetic and customer facing
Hmm.
and those sorts of things. And I think that is one of my favorite things about my role is I am technical and I am customer sided. So I've spent over 10 years in customer management in some way or another. Everything that I was doing was always customer facing, customer, dependent. So I've been able to kind of cater my customer service over those 10 years. But one of the things that, got me in this industry and has kept me in this industry is when I got my first job in insurance tech, my boss at the time sat me down and was like, hey, we really want somebody who can be customer facing, but be analytic. It's okay if you don't know
Hmm.
insurance. How quickly can you learn insurance? Because the bigger thing that we're seeing in this industry, right, is everyone's using software now. When we sell it, we have to continue to help them. We're going to have to, continue to work with them and that sort of thing. The customer sided part of it is so much more important than I think it's ever been in the past in the software solution realm because there's a ton of offerings out there. If we don't
Hmm.
do it correctly, we don't keep up with them, we don't keep them part of the family in the loop, they can go anywhere and get the same software somewhere else or probably a worse equivalent, but you know what I mean. They can always go get another solution and go work with another partner. And so I think treating them more as like part of the process is so important now rather than, just being analytical and letting them know, hey, we're working on it. You have to keep them in the process, keep them part of, the conversation and really just involve them in everything. And then, you feel like you've got a trusted partner. Like, you can rely on the software. And especially like in my world where there's so much compliance, it's important to feel safe with them because they have a ton of important data. So,
Hmm.
keeping that faith in the customer's faith in you, I think is a big part of it too.
Right. No, we definitely will come back to this double profile that you have. But before doing that, Gabby, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, yes. So yeah, my question is because we've been talking about empathy with the end customer and also with the client, but I also want to know how can like teams foster a culture of empathy during the development process because they might be loaded with different tickets, the developers, the QA team, and then other requirements are coming like the weren't planned. So how can we also make sure that we are being empathetic towards our team members, like our colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great point too, right? Because we have very limited time to send these follow-up emails to our clients. Do we even have enough time to send, those emails to our colleagues? So that's a great question. And I think it's
Mm.
really dependent on each individual person on the team, right? I think we learn a lot from working with other folks who do the things correctly and kind of coach us. So I worked on a great team when I first got into InsurTech who was very collaborative. I mean, I was in office at the time and I've been working remote for 5 years. So it's kind of a lot harder in a remote world, right? But when you start in office, you can kind of see, being able to like go to someone's desk and say, hey, thank you for doing that. Or just seeing them in the hallway or seeing them in the office, you can say, thanks for helping with this. Did you reach out to this customer? You can do all those things quickly as you're walking by. We don't have that luxury in a remote world, and most softwares are turning to a remote strategy because it just makes more sense in the ever-changing climate. You have a diverse work population to choose from to fill some of your roles. it makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases, right? But it's having to kind of remind yourself, I need to still have that courtesy that I had in office in a remote setting. And once we do it with each other, I think it also then trickles down into doing it with the clients, right? So I know with my team and a lot of folks on my team, we kind of set aside some time, maybe 30 minutes every other week, just to hop on a call, check in, see how everything's going, see if they have a client that's struggling that I can help, vice versa, see where we can fill in some gaps, and then just chat and be able to have those like face-to-face interactions that we're not getting to have because we're not in office, right? We do a lot of coffee chats, right? You know, first thing in the morning, maybe I need to catch up with you on something that might take 5 minutes, but I'm going to book the whole 30 so we can just take a moment and catch up and, you know, see where we can help each other. Because if we can help balance each other's work balance, then we have that time, right, to take those moments to follow up with the clients and say, hey, I had a free hour today. I could catch up on all my emails, send a little follow up to everybody. So the trickle down effect of that, I think, is huge.
Right. And I definitely and totally agree. Within your methodology, do you implement any sort of retrospectives meeting after a sprint is completed or whenever you reach a milestone or anything as such?
Yeah, so that's a little more on the product team than I am. My
Okay.
understanding is yes, absolutely. And I think it's kind of standard now to do that, to take a look back and say, you know,
Mhm.
how did this release go? What can we do better? We do end up working with our customers pretty intently after a release just to make sure, you know, if there's a new feature, can we train them on that? Any questions that come through, you know, the support and the implementation teams, which I'm a part of, would make sure if they have any questions, we're addressing them. Any new features, we get to them right away. We keep on high alert for the week after release just to make sure we're, you know, catching anything that may have fallen through the cracks. Maybe our QA teams didn't catch it. Maybe we can answer the question about how it now works, or maybe something changed. So we stay on high alert just to make sure that we're keeping an eye out for it. And then I do know that the product team takes some look back at what everything that happened entailed, what the outcomes were, and how that went. But, you know, I guess a lot of that does end up falling on the customer facing because, you know, we're the ones hearing whether or not they liked it. They're putting in a ticket, they're
Right.
saying, I hated that feature or I love that feature. And you get to kind of help them with it and coach them around it a little bit. So I guess it does kind of start with us. And then, you know, the more procedural process would be handled by our product team in this instance.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Ed,
Yeah.
over to you again.
All right, sure thing. So let's circle back to these skills that you have to be empathetic and analytic at the same time at work, right? And most probably outside work as well, but just focusing on that professional side. Um, how do you feel, you know, like with the impact of AI in particular, because we are also, everything is AI now, but do you feel that using AI would help you in any of these two different ways in which you work? I mean, like, do you see any particular tool or any particular technique that might change the way that you are performing the different activities that you do? And what kind of impact have you seen or are you envisioning will happen while using, in this case, AI for the activities that you do?
Yeah, awesome question. I mean, AI is such a hot topic, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in a unique industry in the fact that the insurance industry was a little slow to adopt software in general. We
Mm-hmm.
were very much on paper. Everything was done on paper. And there's still agencies out there who are hard pressed to never join a software, to never move to a
Mm-hmm.
digital landscape, to never trust a cloud with their information. So this industry has been a little slower on the technology front. And I think in that regard, AI is less of a threat to our industry than it is for others. There's a lot of things in insurance that, you know, I don't think anybody is going to trust AI to touch anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's solutions around that we can definitely work with. Our current software, again, since it's not really something that our customers are super excited about in the AI front, we don't have a ton of that. We work mostly with integrations and those sorts of things, but they always depend on a human input, right? But we have a lot of technology that we're using to help customers. So one of my favorite softwares that I've been using lately that has an AI component is Loom. If you're not familiar
Mhm.
with Loom, Loom is a screen recording, video recording solution where you can take quick videos, you can narrate the entire video, and it'll spit out an AI output of your transcript of everything that you said, a quick summary, and if you have any keywords that you're doing throughout it, like action items you need from the person you're sending the video to, it'll summarize all of those key actions at the bottom. We've been using it pretty intently in the product team and the implementation and support teams, either to communicate between the product folks and the support folks to say, here's what the customer's seeing. It's going to be a lot quicker if I just show you a quick video and then have Loom write up everything for me than typing an email. But I'm using it with
Mhm.
customers all the time. And I think the impact is great because it saves us time from having to hop on a call, but they have this interactive video that shows them exactly where they need to click to get to these different things. So it's been a wonderful solution for assisting customers and, getting that information to them quicker and in that way where I don't have to spend hours doing the layman's term explanation of
Mhm.
something. I can just show them very quickly. So I've been loving Loom. I think Loom's AI output is great too, again, with the transcripting. Note recorders and video sessions have been really great to have that output of what were we talking about today, not have to, you know, hire someone specifically to just take minutes, just have somebody. We use that internally in Dyad as well, something that hops on your team's calls and takes all those notes. So I think in small ways, we're comfortable with the AI solutions that have been presented and, can help us internally in the software from our day to day and like to pass that information down to our customers. But I think my industry personally is a long way off from doing any AI integrations aside from maybe a chat bot or something like that. We have some folks
Mhm.
who on their website will have those chat bots in the bottom right corner where they'll talk to an AI assistant. But I think and I don't want to say safe like it's a bad thing. I think a lot of AI gets a bad rep. A lot of AI is super helpful to our day to day and is really time saving. But I think we're a little safe from any larger impacts of maybe AI taking jobs or any of that sort of thing that I think we've been a little scared of lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all are a little bit, but it is true that for some industries, there's always like this human component that will really make it, like super hard to try to actually replace one person with a machine, right?
Right.
I, I I think I've seen a lot of productivity coming up from the fact that you can use that as a tool, but in the end, we still need that human component. And yeah, for sure, I think you have a lot of reason there that it will take time for it to get uh, to that particular industry, and it won't have that huge impact of just taking jobs out of people. So that's great. Actually, I have a little hack there as well, as you were saying that. We also tend to try to use this kind of software for skipping some meetings, Sometimes there are some meetings that could very well be resumed in a, or rather, some of with a video, and then you don't have to jump into the meeting and, like schedule 10 minutes of your time or so, or something that can be just like that. And that's just another secret use that we have for that kind of software. Perhaps that would also help. But anyway, I also have another question, and that has to do with your experience. And for you, what are like the key elements that ensure that a product would truly connect with users? Um, I'm really eager to know more about that.
Yeah, so just from like what do we think is the main things that would make a customer use a product, or is that kind of what you mean?
More than use it, let's say what makes that's what makes the users actually connect with it? What key elements? How do you know that they are loving using the product?
Sure.
If that
I
makes
think,
sense.
yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest ones, and I will repeat this till the day I die, is efficiency. I think we
Mm.
as employees in this new remote world, even not remote, competing with remote, doing, anything in these new working environments that we have in 2024, I think one of the biggest things that everyone is looking for is what is the most efficient software I can get that makes my day-to-day easier. Because I think too, for us remote workers, you run into the what we were just talking about, right? Everything that could be an email becomes a meeting. We've got 10 and 12 meetings a day. We're on calls after calls after calls. It's hard to take 30 minutes to go grab something from my kitchen to eat and to take a moment to get back to my emails because I'm in so many calls. So anything that can make my day-to-day a little bit more efficient, I am going to fall in love with. And I think that's true for anybody in the workforce these days. Things are just increasingly harder. Our workloads are larger. We're taking more time to work. I think statistically right now, every person's workday is a little bit longer than it used to be. We have higher expectations from us, especially in the remote world. If you're sick, you have your computer. Just work, right? So we have a lot more expectations and we take probably more of a beating on ourselves as well and work longer. So I think making sure that we can build something that is going to save time, is going to make things more efficient. We talk a lot about reduction of clicks at Dyad. So we want to make sure that you can get directly where you want to in the software as quickly as possible. We have a ton of shortcuts loaded into our software, in particular Nexture, just to make sure that, if somebody's working on something, and this happens in a day-to-day insurance agency a ton, somebody's working on an email and action something and they get a phone call and they have to drop everything to take the phone call. I want to help them if they're on the phone, go navigate to that client super quickly, put in all the information they had from the call, and they get straight back to what they were doing. So giving them the efficiency that they can have in their day-to-day when these unexpected things come up because again, the workloads are so high, and then making sure that we're just addressing everything that they're looking for. Um, anything that can save time as far as automations, integrations, any of those kinds of things that will do some of their job automatically for them. I think efficiency is probably the biggest one. Aside from that, stability is another big one. Just making sure that, they can be able to get in the
Mhm.
system when they need to get in the system. You don't have a lot of crashes or anything like that, back to Spotify. You're going to have a lot of distrust in Spotify if it's 3 days in a row of you waking up and wanting to listen to your music first thing in the morning and Spotify's not working again. So
Yeah.
stability is probably another big one that I see pretty frequently is, customers want to know that the software is going to be there when they need it. So I think between those two, those are probably your biggest hurdles and the things that are going to keep your customers in your software longer and make sure that they feel you're a trusted partner.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. And now, could you tell us more about what would be good resources for all of us technical, analytical people to actually get more empathetic with our users? What are like some perhaps books or courses, videos? I don't know. What are like your favorite resources to be better prepared on that area?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn Learning. If you haven't been on LinkedIn
Hmm.
Learning and taken a look at a lot of the courses, I try to take a course every month on something on LinkedIn Learning. And I always try to focus on the customer service ones because I think, especially the further we get in our careers, the more we just need a reminder on how to connect with customers because we're all tired. I
Hmm.
totally understand, but you always want that reminder of how to best be empathetic. So I loved LinkedIn Learning courses. There's also a course on Udemy. I think that's how you
Hmm.
say it. It's Udemy. That's called
Hmm.
Project Management 101. I highly recommend it. I'll have to find the gentleman that does it, but it was really impactful to me on kind of understanding a little bit more of user interviews, how best to address these issues when you're asking for more information from customers, how to build these prototypes and take those prototypes back to customers and kind of do that open-end questioning, right? Of where we were like, what would you like this to go to? And where would you envision this click to go to? So those are a couple ones. And then, I think just trying to reframe your mind and think about it as, what if this was my grandma sending in this email or my mom or my brother, and just kind of treating it as like, you have these day-to-day problems with software too. let's take a moment to be in their shoes and think about, the family member who calls you at 3 in the morning and is like, something's wrong with my internet, taking it just a step
Mhm.
farther and considering them as, the human that they are experiencing a problem and try to get in their shoes a little bit. Just kind of reframing your mind or remembering that like we all use software, we all have software frustrations. Let's try to make everybody's day a little bit easier in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Shelby. And I think we are getting close to finishing our call today, but I would love to know what's, like the best experience that you can remind about, like talking to a customer. What was like that moment that perhaps made you feel super happy, or in general, that where you could connect with that person, perhaps. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, I love getting on calls with customers. I think that's the biggest thing that taught me a lot about what our customers go through day to day and what a lot of folks using software day to day go through. Um, we have our own versions of those problems. If you use Jira, Jira sometimes messes up. Every software does. But I think once you get on a call with a customer, kind of walk through their problem, see what they're going through, see the frustration, hear it firsthand, I think it gives you a better understanding of how to connect with them and how to kind of bridge that gap between the user and the user experience and kind of just seeing where the frustration happens. So I love getting on calls with customers because I really think it takes it that extra mile and you can really kind of just tell from that conversation and listening to their voice and hearing how they're using the software, where we can fill in some gaps and where we can kind of help them. And then anytime we can solve something for a customer is the best feeling in the world, right? If you're able to fix a bug for somebody that they have been struggling with or find them a solution that makes whatever they're doing in their day to day easier. I mean, sometimes you get the best calls from customers with just the joy that you're bringing to their week, like it's just going to make their
Mhm.
day to day easier. They're so excited. And it's really, I think, impactful to not only my fulfillment in my role, but their fulfillment in their roles and, making their days a little better. So getting to fix something for a customer is my favorite thing in this role.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Okay, Gabby, I'm not sure if you have any particular questions or comments before we conclude.
Yes, no, I just wanted to say, like, I know that being empathetic is like a personality trait. People grow up and they developed that trait, but it's also something that you can learn. So it is great to hear Shelby talk so passionately about that. It's lovely to hear that there are people that put themselves in others people's shoes, especially in the IT world. So again, it's been lovely to hear you talking a lot about this. I think it's great. It's important. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us today with this amazing topic. Definitely, it's has been one of my favorite tech socials ever.
Yay.
So thank you for that. And yes, so that's what I wanted to say. I don't know if anyone else had any other questions, or else, Shelby, your final comments on this topic.
Oh, awesome. I see a very interesting event in the chat. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a pleasure. I think, it's also really great to hear other sides of the coin as well. So I appreciate it. Like Gabby said, just take a moment to put yourself in others' shoes. And I think it'll take you a long way in building customer software that really makes an impact. So thank you so much again for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Ed.
Amazing.
Anything on your side before we
Yeah, from
conclude?
my side, it was just a blast. I really enjoyed it. Really, I was really eager to have this opportunity, and I'm really thanking Shelby for her time and all the insights that she shared with us. And yeah, I mean, I would love to have the opportunity to have another session at some other point, Shelby, if you can. And
I would love
I
to.
really
Let's do it.
appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
Just let
so
me know.
much.
I'll be there.
thank you. Yeah, let's keep in touch, Shelby, for sure.
Sounds great. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Bye bye.
everyone. See you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.